Investments that don't live up to expectations.
Tonight isn't just Thorne Corporation's night. It's also the night the truth comes out.
Have you ever bet everything on a single moment? A moment you believed, after so many years of relentless effort, after so many long, restless nights, that your hard work would finally be recognized? I did, right at this magnificent Thorne Corporation gala, where my father, Marcus Thorne Sr., San Francisco's most powerful man, stood at the pinnacle of his success. I, Ava Chen, his daughter, walked into that ballroom that night with a sliver of hope, a foolish belief that this time would be different. Ridiculous, isn't it? After 32 years living in his enormous shadow, after countless times my achievements were downplayed, turned into tools for him to polish his own name, I still held on to hope. Just a few weeks ago, I pulled multiple all-nighters perfecting a financial algorithm that secured a multi-million-dollar contract for his own company, an achievement any father would be proud of. Instead, what did I get? A perfunctory nod and a reminder to not rest on your laurels too soon. Even the limited edition Patek Philippe watch I spent almost my entire bonus on to gift him, hoping it would be a bridge to a decent conversation, only earned a raised eyebrow and the comment, "At least you know how to spend money on something valuable." Marcus Thorne Sr., his voice from the stage, booming, full of authority. And like any family, sometimes there are investments that don't live up to expectations. Investments that don't live up to expectations? That's what he called me, in front of hundreds of business partners, in front of the friends he called his second family, in front of his entire world. I stood there, amidst the dazzling lights, feeling like all sound had died, leaving only the sound of my own heart shattering. The expensive evening gown suddenly felt heavy, like the humiliation engulfing me. But Marcus Thorne Sr. didn't know one thing. He didn't know that this investment that didn't live up to expectations, this failure he had just publicly humiliated, was holding a secret carefully sealed in this clutch, a truth capable of burning down the entire empire he'd spent his life building. Did he think he was finishing me? No. He had just given me the perfect reason to start a fight he could never have imagined. Tonight isn't just Thorne Corporation's night. It's also the night the truth comes out. Do you want to know what that secret is? Do you want to witness how an empire that seemed unshakable was shaken to its very core? Stick with me, because this story isn't just about betrayal and pain. It's about the hidden strength you find when you're pushed to the edge, and about the price of truth. And trust me, you won't want to miss a single second. Let me know where you're watching from, and if you're ready for a dramatic journey, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe right now. Let's begin. It's laughable looking back. 32 years on this earth, and I'd spent most of them chasing a shadow, an approval that was never mine to begin with. Marcus Thorne Sr., my father, or rather, the man I'd always mistakenly believed was my father. He was a titan in San Francisco's tech finance world, a giant whose every word, every action exuded absolute power. And me? I was Ava Chen, the daughter fruitlessly trying to earn his nod, a proud smile, or simply an acknowledgement that I too was good enough. My childhood memories are fragmented pieces of subtle criticisms, unspoken comparisons to Ethan, my brother, the Thorne family's little prince. Ethan excelled at sports. Marcus applauded. Ethan pitched a naive business idea. Marcus nodded, praising his vision. As for me, whether I won a prestigious scholarship or graduated as valedictorian, it all seemed merely to be expected, not worthy of his significant attention. A Thorne daughter is expected to do so, he'd often say with a nonchalant expression, as if all my achievements were thanks to the reputation he had bestowed upon me. My mother, Isabel, was the epitome of elegance and silent suffering. Many times I saw a quiet pride flicker in her eyes when I achieved something, only to be quickly extinguished by Marcus's sharp gaze. She never spoke up for me, never publicly acknowledged my efforts in front of him. She chose silence, perhaps to preserve the false peace in our gilded cage of a home. Just last year, One of Thorne Corporation's strategic projects was on the verge of complete collapse due to a critical system error in investment data analysis. Top experts were brought in, but they were stumped. It was I, with my expertise and sleepless nights, who found the flaw and rebuilt the entire forecasting model, saving the corporation hundreds of millions of dollars and, more importantly, its reputation. When it was all over, at the press conference, Marcus proudly declared it the result of brilliant risk management strategy and astute leadership from the executive team. My name wasn't mentioned once, not even a fleeting word of thanks. Perhaps that's why the limited edition Patek Philippe watch I gifted him before this year's gala meant so much. It wasn't just an expensive gift. It was all the bonus money I'd received from my most recent successful M&A deal, a final attempt to grasp at some affection, some hope that he would see me differently. I chose it myself, imagining the moment he would smile, even just a little. But no, all I received was indifference and a remark about knowing how to spend money on something valuable. Value to Marcus Thorne was always measured in tangible things, in power and money, never in affection. The bitter truth about my lineage came about by chance. I'd always felt like an outsider in my own family, a discordant note in the Thorne family's perfect symphony. From my hair color, my eyes, to my personal interests, I seemed to have inherited no prominent traits from Marcus or even Isabel. One boring afternoon, browse online, I saw an ad for 23andMe, the genetic testing service. Out of sheer curiosity, I ordered a kit. The initial results showed some surprising genetic discrepancies. A spark of suspicion ignited, though I tried to push it away. But that seed of doubt kept growing. I decided I had to find out the truth. Getting Marcus's DNA sample wasn't easy. He was extremely cautious, almost paranoid about his privacy. I had to wait for an evening when he was deeply asleep after a night of drinking, sneak into his study where he usually kept his ivory comb. My heart pounded, my hands trembled as I gently removed a few remaining strands of hair. Guilt mingled with an overwhelming urge to know the truth. The day I received the in-depth DNA test results from a reputable lab, I remember sitting motionless in my car for a full hour. My eyes were glued to the bolded text. No paternal relationship exists between Subject A, Marcus Thorne Sr., and Subject B, Ava Chen. The sky felt like it was falling. Shock, disbelief, then a numbing pain. But strangely, mixed in with it was an odd sense of relief, as if an invisible burden I had carried for so many years finally had an explanation. That envelope, containing the results from that moment on, became the ticking time bomb in my clutch, waiting for the right moment to explode. And Marcus, as if to add fuel to the fire, gave me a preview of his main performance at the gala just a week earlier. The corporation held an internal award ceremony for outstanding employees. I, with my superior achievement in developing the new financial algorithm, was named for the Strategic Employee of the Year award. It was a moment I was truly proud of, a recognition of my tireless efforts. When I stepped onto the podium, received the plaque and a bouquet of flowers, Marcus, as CEO, got up to speak. Instead of sincere congratulations, he began by reminding everyone about the importance of luck and family background. Ava's success today, he said, his tone gentle but full of insinuation, certainly owes a significant part to the guidance of her seniors in the corporation, and of course, a solid foundation built by her family. We must remember that real-world experience and humility are the keys to a long journey. Then, with what seemed like malicious accidentalness, he brought up a minor mistake I'd made on a project years ago, an insignificant error but enough to embarrass me in front of all my colleagues and my team sitting below. That was a valuable lesson, he concluded, smiling at me, for Ava to understand that things aren't always easy. Hot blood rushed to my head. That public humiliation, that blatant belittling, was like a slap in the face. At that moment, I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. The bomb in my clutch, it was time to activate it. The upcoming gala wouldn't just be Marcus Thorne Sr.'s night, it would be the night of truth. The Thorne Corporation Gala. From the outside, a perfect picture of wealth and power. The ballroom of the St. Regis San Francisco was lavishly decorated, crystal chandeliers reflecting off expensive jewelry and glasses of bubbling champagne. The air was thick with the scent of high-end perfume and polished pleasantries. But to me, it was an arena, and I knew I was about to enter the biggest battle of my life. I tried to maintain the calmest exterior possible, a professional smile constantly on my lips, a skill I'd honed through years of working in the competitive financial environment, and more importantly, through years of being Marcus Thorne Sr.'s daughter. The clutch containing that earth-shattering secret was held tight in my hand, like a protective talisman or a final devastating weapon. The moment I handed Marcus the velvet box containing the Patek Philippe watch he'd always coveted, my heart still skipped a beat. Some foolish glimmer of hope stubbornly persisted that maybe, just maybe, he would see my sincerity. Marcus opened the box, his eyes scanning the watch's intricate face. A flicker of surprise, so faint it was almost imperceptible, was quickly replaced by his usual indifference. "It's all right," he uttered curtly, hastily strapping the watch onto his wrist. "At least you know how to spend money on something valuable, instead of those fanciful ideas." Immediately after, he turned to Mr. Harrison, a major business partner standing nearby, holding up his wrist to show it off. "Harrison, look at my new masterpiece. Sometimes a man has to reward himself with things of this caliber, my friend." Not a single word of thanks, not a look of acknowledgement for me. As if the watch had flown itself onto his wrist. Ethan, my brother, stood not far away, smirking. His eyes swept over me with a superior air, as if to say, "See? No matter how hard you try, it's useless." Ethan was always like that, always the pampered favorite, always reveling in every failure or slight I endured. He approached, patting my shoulder condescendingly. "Trying to impress, little sister? Sometimes knowing your place is the most important thing." Only Olivia, my younger sister, offered a little warmth. She discreetly squeezed my hand as we passed each other, her eyes full of concern and worry. "Are you okay, Ava?" Olivia whispered, her voice laced with care. I just nodded slightly, forcing a reassuring smile, even though I knew nothing was okay. My mother, Isabel, glided past like an elegant ghost. She avoided my gaze, her delicate hands constantly fidgeting with her pearl necklace, a sign of nervousness I was all too familiar with. She knew. I was sure she knew something was about to happen, or at least she sensed the storm quietly brewing. In a moment of needing to breathe, I quietly slipped away from the noisy crowd, heading towards the balcony overlooking the glittering San Francisco Bay at night. I needed some silence to sort through my chaotic emotions, to prepare myself for what was to come. And just then, fate led me to overhear a conversation I probably should never have heard. Or perhaps it was exactly what I needed to hear to find the courage to do what I was about to do. Marcus's hearty, confident voice drifted from a nearby VIP lounge, where he was chatting amicably with Mr. Harrison and a few other important guests. The door was ajar just enough for me to hear every word. "That new financial algorithm of your Ava's is quite a breakthrough, Marcus," Mr. Harrison praised, his voice full of admiration. "It's helped us optimize our investment portfolio phenomenally." Marcus laughed loudly, a laugh I knew all too well, the laugh of a smug, condescending man. "That girl, Ava? She has a bit of cleverness," he said, his tone patronizing. But it was mostly my guidance that I had to spend a lot of time teaching, mentoring her so she wouldn't stray from the golden principles of the Thorne family. Sometimes the stubbornness and, somewhat naive ideas of youth need to be molded by experienced hands like ours. Wouldn't you agree, Harrison? My heart felt like someone had squeezed it shut. So in his eyes, the result of all my sleepless nights, all my intellectual effort, was just a bit of cleverness that needed molding. Actually, Marcus continued, his voice taking on an even more secretive and superior tone. The success of that algorithm, or the M&A deal it just completed, was all part of Thorne Corporation's long-term strategic plan. I saw the potential and laid out the roadmap long ago. Ava was just an executor of a small part of it. Sometimes she's a bit too ambitious, wanting to prove herself, but eventually she has to follow the arrangements of her father, like me. The last straw? This blatant lie, this cruel dismissal of my contributions, was more painful than any insult. He didn't just disregard me, he was deliberately trying to erase my existence and my efforts, turning me into a puppet in the grand play he directed. The anger that had been simmering for so long erupted fiercely, burning away any remaining hesitation. I clutched the clutch tighter. There was no turning back now. Just then, the MC's voice boomed from the stage, announcing the keynote speech by the CEO of Thorne Corporation, Marcus Thorne Sr. All the lights dimmed, leaving only a brilliant spotlight on the stage. Marcus, in his perfectly tailored suit, stepped out with absolute confidence, like an emperor about to be crowned. He smiled at the crowd, the smile of a victor. And I, standing in the shadows of the balcony, looked towards him, my heart as cold as ice. His show was about to begin. But he didn't know that tonight, I too had a role to play, and that role would be the lead. Marcus Thorne Sr. stood at the podium, head held high, accepting the rounds of applause as if it were his due. The stage lights highlighted his carefully groomed salt and pepper hair and his trademark smug smile. He began his speech with familiar platitudes, empty phrases about strategic vision, about the relentless dedication that had brought Thorne Corporation to its leading position. He spoke of legacy, of responsibility, of the future. Everything was perfect, calculated down to the last detail, just like the life he had tried to impose on everyone around him. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus's voice echoed through the hall. The success of Thorne Corporation is not just my personal success, but the success of a collective, of a family. And speaking of family, I cannot fail to mention those who will carry this torch forward. His gaze softened artificially as he looked towards Ethan, my brother. Ethan, my eldest son, you have proven your mettle as a young leader, daring to think and act. The resort real estate projects you are in charge of not only bring in enormous profits, but also affirm our pioneering position. Father is very proud of you. Ethan puffed out his chest, smiling as he accepted the praise as if it were obviously what he deserved. I knew better than anyone that those projects all bore Marcus's fingerprints and massive financial backing. Then he turned towards Olivia, my younger sister. And Olivia, my dearest youngest daughter, you have always been the warm sunshine of this family. Your grace and kind heart in community activities have brought immeasurable intangible value to the Thorne brand. You do very well, my daughter. Olivia smiled demurely, a somewhat forced smile. She was always sensitive, and I knew she sensed the enveloping tension. The atmosphere in the hall grew expectant. Everyone knew, by custom, that remarks about me, Ava Chen, would follow. I stood there, under hundreds of eyes, trying to maintain an indifferent exterior, but my heart was beating faster. I had prepared for the worst, but nothing could have prepared me for the words about to come from that man's mouth. Marcus paused for a moment, his eyes scanning the room, then they landed on me, cold and sharp as a knife. The smile vanished from his lips, replaced by a frighteningly stern expression. And of course, he said, his voice dropping, drawing out each word dramatically. In any investment portfolio, whether in business or family, there will be items that yield outstanding returns, and there are also investments that don't live up to expectations. A suffocating silence fell over the hall. Whispers began to rise. I could feel curious, pitying, and even gloating eyes fixed on me. I saw my mother, Isabel, raise a hand to her mouth, her face pale. Ethan couldn't hide his smug grin. Olivia looked down, her shoulders trembling. Marcus continued, his voice now devoid of any warmth, only harsh judgment. I want to say I am proud of the legacies I have built and of the children who will carry them on. Ethan, my son, is a shining example. Olivia, my youngest daughter, always brings joy. He paused, looking directly at me, his eyes emotionless. Then he spoke, each word like a hammer blow to my chest. And like any family, sometimes there are investments that don't live up to expectations. I want to say I am proud of all my children. He paused again, as if to add weight to what was coming. The hall held its breath, with the exception of the failure who was trying to force her way into this world. The failure. Those two words echoed in my head, over and over. The blood in my veins seemed to freeze. Humiliation, pain, and outrage surged through me. I saw the faces around me blur, the whispers grow distant. All I could feel was Marcus's gaze, a gaze affirming that I was a disappointment, a burden, something unworthy of the Thorne name. He didn't even stop there. As if wanting to twist the knife deeper, Marcus continued, his voice full of condescension and superiority. Some people are born to shine, to inherit and promote core values. Others are not. Ava, my daughter, he emphasized my daughter with heavy sarcasm, should perhaps find a more realistic path for herself. instead of trying to prove herself in places she doesn't belong. Thorne Corporation needs true warriors, not daydreamers or burdens of charity. Burdens of charity. So that's how he saw my existence. My entire life, my efforts, my achievements, bought with sweat and tears, in his eyes, were just a burden, an act of his benevolence. The entire hall was plunged into an awkward silence. A few people coughed. Some looked at the floor. No one dared to speak. This glamorous stage, in an instant, had become my own public execution ground. The initial pain subsided, leaving a cold emptiness. And then, from the depths of that emptiness, a flame began to flicker. Not despair, but anger. A pure, powerful anger, nurtured by 32 years of being disregarded, denied, and hurt. I looked at Marcus. He had finished speaking, was smiling, waiting for the applause for his frank and constructive speech. He didn't know he had just made a fatal mistake. He had just awakened the monster he had tried to suppress for so long. I took a deep breath. My hand, still clutching the clutch, was no longer trembling. Instead, there was an extraordinary steadiness. It was time. Marcus Thorne Sr.'s play was over. Now it was time for Ava Chen's performance. The silence in the hall was broken by the slight scrape of my chair. All eyes, which had already been on me with pity or curiosity, now turned to surprise as they saw me slowly rise. I stood up. My movement, though gentle, was like a stone dropped into a still pond, causing all the whispering eyes to fall silent and fix on me. No more looks of pity or curiosity. Instead, there was surprise, confusion, and perhaps a little apprehension at my unusual silence. The chair scraped softly as I pushed it back, but in the stillness, it echoed strangely loud. I didn't rush. I slowly smoothed down my evening gown, a seemingly normal gesture that held incredible composure after what had just happened. My eyes didn't look down, didn't avoid anyone. I looked straight at the stage, straight at Marcus Thorne Sr., the man who had just publicly trampled my honor. The smug smile on his lips faltered slightly, replaced by an annoyed frown when he saw I wasn't reacting as he'd expected. No tears, no running away in shame. Then I began to walk. Step by step, slowly, steadily, towards the nearest empty microphone for guest speakers, a microphone that had probably never been used for such a purpose. No one stopped me. Perhaps they were too shocked. Or perhaps, for a moment, they sensed something different, a powerful energy emanating from the woman they had always seen as Marcus Thorne's daughter. When I stood before the microphone, absolute silence enveloped the hall. I could hear my own heartbeat, but my voice when I spoke was clear and without a tremor. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice carrying not too loud but clear enough for everyone to hear. And especially Father, or should I say, Mr. Thorne Sr.? A soft murmur rose and then died. Marcus's eyes flashed with anger. I sincerely thank you for your exceedingly enlightening speech just now, I continued, emphasizing enlightening with unconcealed sarcasm. For the past 32 years, I have always wondered what I did wrong, where I fell short, to never receive recognition, not even a little, from the man I always respectfully called father. I graduated as valedictorian from Stanford University with a degree in finance. I built my own career at one of Wall Street's toughest investment funds before returning to contribute to Thorne Corporation. I brought in million-dollar contracts. I saved projects that seemed unsalvageable, like the very algorithm Mr. Harrison just praised, or the resort real estate project Ethan is in charge of. I glanced quickly at Ethan. He looked flustered and angry. And in return, I received the titles of failure, investment that didn't live up to expectations, or even burden of charity. Interesting, isn't it? I paused for a moment, letting my words sink into the air. But today, I continued, my voice still strangely calm, after your speech, Mr. Thorne, I finally understand. The problem isn't whether my efforts were enough. The problem isn't whether I was worthy. My hand slowly opened the clutch. All eyes seemed drawn to it. I pulled out a white envelope, inside which was the paper whose every word I knew by heart. The problem, I said, my voice hardening, lies here. I looked straight up at Marcus, whose face had now changed color, his usual confidence gone, replaced by a look of bewilderment and fear I had never seen before. The problem is that you, Marcus Thorne Sr., I held the envelope high, are not my biological father. The entire hall seemed to explode in silence, a silence even more terrifying than screams. I heard someone gasp, the sound of a glass shattering in a distant corner. My mother, Isabel, clutched her chest, her eyes wide with horror, as if she had just seen a ghost. This DNA test result, I continued, my voice distinct, allowing no room for doubt, was performed by a reputable laboratory, with a control sample obtained legally. It scientifically and irrefutably confirms that between you and me, there is no direct biological paternal relationship. I glanced at the large screen behind the stage, still displaying the Thorne Corporation logo. If only I could project the words DNA mismatch confirmed onto it right now, so no one could pretend not to understand. But perhaps my words were enough. So, Mr. Thorne, I said, a smirk playing on my lips, perhaps I'm not really the Thorne family's failure. Because, quite simply, I never belonged to this family in the first place. I do not carry your blood, and perhaps that is the luckiest thing in my life. I placed the DNA result envelope decisively on the microphone stand. Then I did something no one expected. I reached into my clutch again, pulling out a tiny, carefully encrypted USB drive. And by the way, I said, my voice light as air but loud enough for Marcus to hear, the original source code for the financial algorithm Mr. Harrison just mentioned, along with all the data proving my role in salvaging the Thorne Paradise Resort project Ethan is so proudly taking credit for. It's all in here. I think it's time it belonged to the person who actually created it. I didn't wait for Marcus's reaction. I didn't look at the stunned faces of the Thorne family or the guests. I simply turned, USB in hand, head held high, back straight, and walked calmly and with dignity out of that ballroom, out of their lives. The murmuring behind me erupted like a disturbed beehive, quickly turning into uncontrollable chaos. But I didn't look back. My steps were light, as if I had just shed a burden that had oppressed me for 32 years. The grand doors of the ballroom closed behind me, closing a bitter chapter of my life, and opening up a brand new future. A future I would dictate myself. The moment the heavy ballroom doors slammed shut behind me, I could almost hear my own sigh of relief, a sound buried beneath the strong facade I'd struggled to maintain. The oppressive atmosphere, the prying eyes, the venomous words, all were left behind. I stood alone in the quiet hallway for a moment, sensing the unusual stillness compared to the storm I knew was surely raging inside. The small USB drive rested in my palm, strangely warm, like a testament to the freedom I had just reclaimed. I didn't need to imagine too much about what was happening in there. I knew Marcus Thorne Sr. After the initial shock, his fury would erupt like a volcano. His face flushed with anger and shame. He was probably screaming, trying to regain control, trying to deny or downplay what I'd just said. But the truth, once released, is like an arrow shot from a bow, impossible to recall. The image of the powerful man, who always saw himself as the director of every play, was now likely floundering, disoriented by a script he had never anticipated. And Isabel, my mother? The image of her clutching her chest, her eyes wide with horror, still haunted me. Her pain, I could feel it. But was it the pain of an exposed secret, the pain of shame, or true pain for what I had endured? Perhaps all of it. She would have to face Marcus's wrath, society's judgment, and more importantly, her own conscience. Would this downfall be enough for her to find the voice she had lost for so long? Ethan, my brother, was undoubtedly yelling, cursing me with the vilest words. He would protect his father, protect the empire he believed he would soon inherit. My existence, the truth I had just announced, was a direct threat to his prince status. He would never forgive me, only Olivia. I thought of her with a pang of sadness. Olivia was sensitive and kind. She was surely in shock and deep distress. She was caught between her affection for me and her loyalty to the family. I just hoped that, through this storm, Olivia would find her own truth. As I walked quickly out of the St. Regis Hotel, the cool San Francisco night air hit my face, bringing with it a strangely fresh sensation. Liam, my best friend, was already waiting in his car, parked in a discreet corner. His face clearly showed his worry when he saw me. "Ava, are you okay?" Liam asked as soon as I got into the car, his voice urgent. He had known my plan. Though he hadn't entirely agreed with its recklessness, he had ultimately chosen to support me. I took a deep breath, trying to smile. "I'm okay, Liam. More than okay. I'm free." But as soon as I said the word free, a sudden shiver ran down my spine. The adrenaline from the confrontation began to subside, giving way to an exhaustion and other complex emotions surfacing. "Tell me everything," Liam said, gently starting the car. He didn't press, just simply there, ready to listen. And I told him. I recounted every detail of that horrific evening, from Marcus's speech, the public insults, to the moment I stood up, announced the DNA truth, and took back what was mine. Liam listened in silence, occasionally letting out a soft curse when I described Marcus's actions. When I finished, the phone in my purse began to vibrate incessantly, a barrage of calls and messages. The screen lit up with familiar names: Mom, Ethan, Olivia, and even some unknown numbers I guessed were from Marcus's lawyers or assistants. "They're starting," Liam said, glancing at my phone. "The media and legal storm is about to hit." "I know," I replied, my voice a little tired but unwavering. "But I'm ready. This time, I won't run away." I silenced my phone but didn't turn it off. I wanted to know what they would do, but I would face it my own way on my own terms. Liam's car glided through the night, taking me away from the glamorous city center, away from the Thorne name and the burdens it carried. Outside the window, the lights of San Francisco gradually blurred and then disappeared. A feeling of relief, mixed with a little loneliness and a fragile hope for a new future, began to creep into me. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Marcus Thorne Sr. would never leave alone the person who had dared to challenge and embarrass him. Ethan would seek revenge by any means. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I was truly in control of my own life. The bomb had exploded, and from those ashes, I would rebuild everything, my way. Liam didn't take me back to the luxury apartment Thorne Corporation had provided. We both knew it was no longer safe, at least not for now. Instead, he took me to a discreet furnished apartment he had quickly booked under a different name, a temporary refuge where I could escape the media storm and the Thorne's fury. That night, I barely slept. The adrenaline from the gala confrontation had faded, leaving an extreme emptiness and exhaustion. I sat by the window, looking down at the still bustling San Francisco streets below, but my mind reeled with chaotic emotions. There was an extraordinary sense of relief, as if I had just shed shackles that had bound me for years. But mixed with it was a gentle sadness, a mourning for the so-called family I never truly had, and a vague fear of what was to come. The USB drive containing the fruits of my labor lay on the table, a tangible reminder of the independence I had just won, but also a clear declaration of war. The next morning, as the first rays of dawn pierced through the window, my phone, which had been silent all night, started buzzing again. This time, it wasn't a barrage of calls from Marcus or Ethan, but a long text message from a private number I knew belonged to my mother, Isabel. My heart tightened. I had braced myself for anger, for reproaches, but the content of the message stunned me. It wasn't an accusation, but a belated confession, the trembling words of a woman who had carried the burden of a secret for too long. "My dearest Ava," the message began, words I rarely heard from her. "I know no apology is enough for what you've been through, but I have to tell you the truth you should have known a very long time ago." And then Isabel told her story. She told of a passionate first love during her college years with a poor but talented and kind medical student named David Miller, Dr. David Miller, my biological father. She spoke of the pressure from her prestigious family, their vehement disapproval of the relationship that wasn't a match in social standing. Then she met Marcus Thorne, an ambitious young businessman her family deemed worthy. When Isabel discovered she was pregnant with me, David's child, Marcus made an offer. He would marry her, give me his last name, a legitimacy. In exchange, the secret of my origin had to be buried forever. Marcus didn't do it entirely out of love for Isabel, but also for the connections and social status the marriage would bring, a perfect stepping stone for the empire he was building. "Marcus promised to love you as his own," Isabel wrote, the words seemingly soaked in tears. But perhaps some men can never separate their feelings from matters of bloodline. Every time he looked at you, perhaps he saw David's shadow, a reminder of the past, of another man who had once possessed my heart. I was too weak, too afraid to speak the truth. I chose silence, hoping time would erase everything. But I was wrong. The biggest mistake of my life was letting you endure that coldness and injustice. After reading the message, I sat in stunned silence. The truth, however painful, connected all the fragmented pieces of my life. Marcus's coldness, his favoritism towards Ethan, my feeling outsider, it all made sense. The anger towards Marcus was still there, but now mixed with it was a strange sympathy for Isabel, a woman trapped by pressures and the wrong choices of her past. While I was still trying to digest my mother's confession, Liam walked into the room looking tense, holding a tablet open to an online news page. "Ava, you need to see this," he said. It was the first news about the scandal at the Thorne Corporation gala. Most major outlets reported rather cautiously, likely due to Marcus's influence and power. They only mentioned an unexpected family incident that caused the party to end early. But on social media forums, the story had exploded with all sorts of rumors and low-quality videos secretly filmed on phones. Marcus Thorne Sr. was undoubtedly using every means to control the damage. A brief press release from Thorne Corporation had been issued, stating that the circulating information was false and malicious, and vaguely hinting at legal action against those slandering them. "And there's more," Liam said, his voice dropping. "I just heard from a friend in the industry. Ethan is starting to make moves. He's whispering to key partners, influential figures in the financial world, that you're psychologically unstable, using dirty tricks to bring down your father because you didn't get the inheritance you wanted. He's also insinuating that your past successes on Wall Street were due to luck or having someone pull strings for you." So the retaliation had begun faster than I'd thought. These weren't just empty threats. Ethan was genuinely trying to destroy the career and reputation I had worked so hard to build. Anger flared up in me again, but this time it was no longer helpless indignation. It was the fire of determination. They wanted a war? I would show them war. "Liam," I said, my voice calm but full of resolve. "Connect me with the best lawyer you know, and find me all the information you can on Dr. David Miller." The storm had only just begun, and I knew I had to be strong to face it. But this time, I was no longer fighting for anyone's approval. I was fighting for truth, for honor, and for myself.